Good morning, Sonoma County Alliance. How's everybody doing this morning? Good. We have another fantastic program for you. But before we get started, Katie, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Janet Connors, and I'm your 2023 president. And now, in honor of original indigenous inhabitants, I would like to share the following land acknowledgement. As persons living in Sonoma County and with gratitude, we recognize that we are on the ancestral lands of the Coast Miwaks, Pomo, and Wapo, who are the original caretakers of this area. We respectfully acknowledge the indigenous peoples who have been stewarding and maintaining relationships on this land as knowledge keepers for millennia. And a couple of announcements before our executive director report. I'd like to thank Alejandro and Sound Ideas and hope that Don is recuperating well. I want to also thank our sustaining members. And then I would like to give a shout out to our committee chairs and committee members. So if you are part of a Sonoma County Alliance committee, please stand. Membership committee, education, community engagement and safety rewards, environmental, water supply, transportation, marketing and communications, programs, finance, and DEI. I thank you all for your service, your support, and your passion, and I welcome those of you who are not on a committee to join one. And then lastly, our 2023 survey will be out, member survey will be out soon. Please respond as soon as you see it. Your voice matters. This is a valuable tool for our annual strategic plan. And now I'd like to turn it over to Ty Mooney, our executive director.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to move this real quick. So I thought I would start off the morning with some positive highlights from our education committee. Recently we have a $2,500 donation to the Family Justice Center in Sonoma County, which if you haven't toured it yet, please go take a tour. It's incredible the services that we have right here in our county. And also really near and dear to my heart, we have finally found a home for our little library and our bench, which will be going to Rohnert Park at Santa Alicia Park. That is District 1, which is the second most impoverished district in Sonoma County next to Roseland. It's also my neighborhood. And what's really great about Santa Alicia Park is sitting on that plot of land is John Reed Elementary School, which serves 393 students. Of that, 87% are minority enrollment, and I believe 90% qualify for free reduced lunch. We're really excited to be able to put this in a place where it's really needed and to enhance literacy in an area outside of Santa Rosa too. So this is great. If you are, as Jason and Mick, I know Mick's here, our chairs of that committee, thank you guys so much, and everyone that serves on that committee. I'd like to give them a round of applause for their work. All right, now that we all have some blood flowing here, we have some endorsements and supports to report today. So recently our SCAPAC and Sonoma County Alliance Board offered letters of support to the SRO program coming back to Santa Rosa City Schools. You could read the full letter of support on our website. It's in the news. And attached to that is also a PDF slide that was given to us by Chief Cregan, and it has more information about the proposal that they're putting forward. And I really hope that you take the time to read it, to learn more about it, and if you feel so inclined to support that initiative, you can write a letter to City Council and to the Santa Rosa School Board of Directors. and push for it as well. If you take a look at the slides that are attached on that, you'll see so much has been done to make this a community effort where everyone feels safe. So please do take a look, and if you have questions, I'm sure Cregan would love to answer them. And another exciting initiative we have, we're partnering with CTE, the Economic Development Board, and Santa Rosa Metro Chamber. We're working to build a big platform to address a common goal, which is to retain workforce in our county. So keeping that young talent here, and we are doing exploring internships for your business on the 3rd of November. It's via Zoom at 9 a.m. So just bring your coffee. There's so many benefits to having interns in your business, and it also is just great work for our community. There's flyers on the table. Feel free to learn more about those, and hopefully you'll join us. There's a registration link on our website. Other upcoming events, we have our next GMM, which is November 1st, and that is on county safety. We've got Carla Rodriguez, our DA, and we have Chief Cregan, and we have Director of Public Safety of Burnett Park, Kilgore. And we have our November 3rd CTE Internship Program Info Meeting, and December 6th, we have the ever popular industry update where we're gonna bring 7 community leaders in to talk about what 2023 looked like and what the projections are for 2024. So we're all in the loop on how we can work together. And on your tables, there's also a program where you'll see a QR code. You could download the slides for today so you could follow along in case you're sitting in the back and the font is small, or if you just want to take it home or send it to a friend. There's QR codes and Wi-Fi passwords on those documents. It's also right at, oh, yeah. Oh,
You turned it off.
that's fabulous. Okay, well that's today. We're gonna figure that one out. Well, there's definitely a QR code on your table, so we could start there and we'll figure out the rest. And as always, I want to end with a call to action. We are an advocacy group. We'll figure that one out. We're an advocacy group, and we can't make educated and informed decisions without representation at the table. So I urge you to bring your friends and to bring people in here so we can make sure that we're making informed decisions that best suit our community as a whole. We're going to figure out the TVs, but thank you.
So we're going to try something a little different this time, and I'm going to come around and do the self-introductions while Ty fixes the TV. If you are a guest, please give me your business card. And this could be business fixing history. I think this is the folder. Oh, okay. Okay. Where do you start? So as I come around, I ask the table to stand and then introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning. Eric Schmies, Golden State Lumber.
Good morning, Chris Fiscalini, Comerica Bank.
Good morning, Jennifer Litwack, President and CEO of PEP Housing.
Jennifer. And I would like to introduce my guest this morning, Oscar Chavez, President and CEO of the Community Foundation.
And I'd like to introduce my guest, Carla Rodriguez, next month's speaker. Welcome. And I'm Nick Menendez, Pacific Advisors. Cal Wins, Generation Housing.
Jen Close, Generation Housing.
Lisa Carino, United Way, the wine country.
Stephanie Picardo and Generation Housing.
Ty Mooney.
Hi, good morning, Melinda Rivera. Melinda Rivera with Pacific Gas and Electric. And I am joined by my colleague who will introduce his name, but he's the new North Coast Regional Vice President.
Dave Canning, good to see everyone this morning.
Chris Wilson with the Historic Railroad Square Association.
Good morning, Gary Ploss from the beautiful city of Healdsburg, Fowler Associates.
Terry Fowler, Fowler Associates.
Tiffany Godby here, GMH Builders.
Eric Koenig, chauffeur, planning commissioner, County District 5.
Artie Dexter, Ludwig and Dexter, and Super Service Plumbing.
Ross Liscombe, real estate broker, Century 21 Epic.
Michelle Whitman, Sonoma County Community Development Commission.
Good morning, Dick Dowd, a retired past president of the Alliance.
Kurt Nichols, retired past president.
Dan Condren, member of SCAPAC.
Good morning, Mike Martini, Tasker Winery.
Good morning, Mark Soylent Company, and new chair of the Transportation Committee.
Tony Albanez, retired past president.
Thank you. Bob, I'd like to start with you, if that's okay.
I'm Bob Sonnenberg, the president and CEO of the Earl Baum Center, which serves the community and folks with sight loss.
Steve Burlewell with Friends of Smart.
Katie Dillwood, Christofferson Builders.
Carrie Chambers, Community First Credit Union.
Rob Sanville, KLH Consulting.
Arthur Chaden, Sonoma County, one of the backmen of Sonoma County, current president.
Tracy Russo, Hogan Land Services, and I have a guest today, Matthias Santini with Hogan Land Services.
Mark Nelson, Mid-State Construction.
Allie Mayo, Great Resort and Casino.
Doug Williams, retired.
Brian Lane, Commercial Residential Real Estate Services.
Dee Swanheiser, Greenbelt Alliance.
Danny Sheen with Friends of Smart.
Carly Rodriguez, Mid-State Construction.
Kevin Zuko, ZFA Structural Engineers. I have two guests. Kevin Marks, Senior Engineer at ZFA, and Drew Faison, Principal at ZFA.
Marlene Soylent, Soylent Management.
Rex Barney, Holly Construction.
Justin Hunter, Holly Construction.
Larkin O'Leary, Common Ground Society. Taylor Knudsen, Common Ground Society.
Rick Carlisle, BKF Engineers.
Ryan Used, BPM.
Morning, Brandon Jewell, Director of the Sonoma Corps Internship Program, CT Foundation.
Kathy Goodacre, CTE Foundation.
David Brown, Adobe Associates, Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors.
Good morning, Jen Collini, Leap Solutions Group.
Good morning, Pete Lescure Engineers. Roy Martinez, Exit Strategies Group, and on the board of PEP Housing.
Juan Nieto with Vanguard Properties.
Good morning, Tanya Gisconi, Gisconi Event Management Solutions, and Sonoma Marin Fair.
Good morning, Kim August with Burbank Housing.
Ron Edwards, Hillsburg City Council.
Ernest Berghoff, broker and CEO at Berghoff Realty.
Tony Spisman with 707 Promotions.
Marty Murray with Murray Insurance Services.
Good morning, Lori Rooney with North Bay Biz Magazine.
Rosie Padilla with North Bay Biz Magazine.
Good morning, Glenn Smith with Smith Ballard. I'd like to introduce my guest, Vineeth Pillai, Sonoma County native, Montgomery High, USF Law School. He's starting with me this Monday. All right.
Good morning, Joe Dietzen with West America Bank. Good morning, Dennis Harder, retired past president, and past Transportation Committee, for 35 years.
And I'd like to introduce two guests of mine, John Contreras and Sonia Viek Barwick from SAY.
Brian Barrett, financial advisor, New York Life.
Mark Hale, Carlisle Macy.
David De Los Santos with TLCD Architecture.
Good morning, Ryan Bucksbaum, next one second. And I want to introduce Victor McKnight's guest. It's Eugene Dillon with the Dillon Consulting Group.
Good morning, Ben Wickham with Burbank Housing.
Diva Marie Proto, Sonoma County Clerk, Recorder, Assessor, and Registrar of Voters. And I have two guests today, Amanda King, our Chief Deputy Clerk Recorder, and Rhiannon Yeager, Chief Deputy Assessor.
Jenny Anderson with Becoming Independent.
Seth Mays with GMH Builders. Earlier you heard my guest down there, Tiffany Godby here with GMH Builders.
Good morning, Managing Partner of WSI, Ryan Kelly, and I'd like to welcome a guest and a friend, Tim Carroll from Edward Jones.
Good morning, Fabian Graf of architecture firm Studio Graf.
Hi, I'm Jack Poller with the Progressive Travel Alliance. My guest today is Tiffany Lawson with Positive Cleaning.
Good morning, Scott Onrod, Leap Solutions Group, and I have a guest, Elizabeth Palmer from Elizabeth Palmer Attorney at Law.
Bill Bolster, Electro-Optical Components.
Aaron Smith with Adobe Associates.
Steve Clegg, Bauer Geotechnical.
Carl Service from TLCD Architecture.
Mia Bowler, Friedman Goldberg, Wargo Hess.
Jeff Woods with Santa Rosa Police Officers Association, and I'd like to welcome and introduce Sergeant Matt North, who's going to be representing the Santa Rosa Police Management Association here.
Scott Kincaid, Facility Development Company.
Good morning, William Miller, BC Engineering Group.
Lisa Wiki-Schaffner, North Coast Builders Exchange.
Good morning, Miguel Andrade Marin with Golden State Lumber.
Mark Stapp, Sonoma State, Santa Rosa City Council.
Good morning, Gary Lentz, Loan Depot Home Mortgage.
I think that's it. We just have to do the drawing, and I will ask you to pick a card. Tim Carroll from Edward Jones, please come on up.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, where were we? Well, and now it has come to the time for the main event. It is my pleasure to introduce our discussion on the housing crisis in Sonoma County with Jen Close. Did I do it again? Okay. Jen Close spent nearly 15 years as a lawyer specializing in real estate law. Generation Housing was incubated and is directed by cross-sector leaders representing healthcare, education, environment, and business, who agree that a housing advocacy organization to promote housing policy and educate the public is a crucial missing component in our local housing development. There's a lot to know about Jen Close, but this was one of the most important aspects that I thought was important for us to know about Generation Housing. Jen is an active in her local community leadership. She's an innovator for change. Her list of accomplishments, as I just said, are noteworthy, but I prefer to ask you to Google them, and let's get Jen up here so we can hear from her. Please don't Google me.
I find myself to be frighteningly Googleable. And when people say I can't find your email address, I wonder if they have a computer, actually. But none of us get to control our Google. both shows up on Google. But good morning, I'm Jen. Thanks for having me. It's been a while since I've been here. And the last time I was here on school stuff, and I remember I ended with a call to action, and that there was a real response from this group. So I am hoping to have that same kind of response today. So let me just tell you kind of my agenda today is I'm going to start with the question, and then I'm going to give some general information, introduction about generation housing. I'm going to give some good news, some bad news, some information, some bad news, some information, some bad news, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity. So that's the plan, and we'll go through this, and hopefully I won't take, I'm going to find a clock here, too much of your time, but there is a whole lot to talk about, and this is important stuff. But we'll try to stay on task, and hopefully I'll be as well-spoken as I am at this time in the morning. Usually that's only to my dog, so if I shift into the doggy voice or something and say, good job, then you'll understand why. Okay. There are surveys done all the time about community priorities by the Press Democrat, by SSU, by certain groups, and almost always housing and homelessness comes up at the top of the list of community concerns. So I first just want to ask a question of this group, and by a show of hands, and this is also just to wake everybody up too, by a show of hands, tell me if you would join in that opinion that housing and homelessness are of our top concerns here in Sonoma County. And that's good, enthusiastic hand raising, thank you. Okay. That's not super surprising. Now tell me, raise your hand now if you think this is too hard a problem to solve. And don't be shy, like it's important for us to know. I love it, so that means that there are, okay, go ahead Charlie, you can really raise it up, don't be shy. It's a big problem, right? It's a hard problem. But I think this group that gets up really early in the morning, comes to breakfast once a month to hear about our community's problems and how they can be part of the solution, and then participates in committees on the interim, that you all are, raise your hand if this is true, problem solvers and doers. And don't be shy on this. Like, this is something to be proud of, because not everybody is problem solvers and doers. A lot of people are just Instagrammers. But if you are problem solvers and doers, then raise your hand, show me one more time. Okay, good, because I'm going to give you an opportunity. I'm going to give you an opportunity on that. Now, like you, and most of the people who respond to all these community surveys I have referenced, about 10 out of 10 of our, good morning. I know. What do I point this at? Temporarily? I can push this button. Qualified? Google search. I can do it. Okay, it's a space bar. Yep. Nice. We solved one problem today. All right, we're gonna go back. All right, generation housing. We are in our fourth year, actually. We've done about 3 years and 9 months, and most of that's in the pandemic. And so this is the first time I've been back, actually, since the pandemic. And that's been an interesting process. But I think we've done a lot so far. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about us first before I get into it. Like I said, I'll start with a little information. And, like you, we focus on how, we think housing is a top problem, but I think also like you, it is not just because we like seeing more buildings, right? It is because we think it is critical to, okay. It is because at Generation Housing, we envision vibrant communities, and I think we all agree on that we would like that, where everyone can contribute to an equitable, healthy, and resilient North Bay, and we believe that begins with homes, that we can't even get to that other stuff unless people are safely and stably and affordable homes, that they have homes that meet their needs and allow them to do even a little bit more than that, a little bit more than make the rent, but contribute to the local economy, to support their kids in their growing up, to save for retirement, but to generally be able to contribute to the community that we would like to have. So in Generation Housing, our work falls into 4 buckets generally, and there's kind of another 5th that I'll mention real quick, and that is that we endorse and advocate for projects. We advocate for policy at the state level, even a little bit at the federal level, and then also at the local level. We participate in collaboration and partnership with other organizations to work on financial solutions to help get things to pencil, because that's really hard here. And we can't do any of that without doing public and political will building, without creating a pro-housing ethic here in Sonoma County. We want to change some hearts and minds on housing. There are some folks who are either whether it's opposed or fearful of it or just opposed to change sometimes. But I also think that it's really hard. There are a few lawyers in the room, and I think that y'all will probably agree with me that it's really hard to change people's minds. That you often, your best closing argument is to make it to the people who are already on your side and to have them do the mind changing, or to have them raise their voices to make sure that the important points are heard. So what's really important in our work when we say public and political will building is getting folks to understand kind of the difference between a value or a priority and actually having the will to take action, and getting folks to stand up and raise their voice and say out loud what their will is, or what their values are, what their priorities are, and that we would like some action. So that's kind of, those are the general 4 buckets. And then I mentioned a 5th bucket. The 5th bucket is that we're starting to do some coalition building across the North Bay in support of regional solutions, and also actually diving in a little bit deeply into some of our neighboring counties. All right, so we like to do our work in an evidence-based way. We love data, and we think it is important to ground our decisions and to help others, our policymakers, ground their decisions in data. So one of the first things that we did, and we are redoing this number actually as we speak, although the preliminary numbers say we're about the same, is say exactly what is our housing need. Because I don't know about y'all, but you know, 4 or 5 years ago, right after the fires, we heard all kinds of different numbers about our housing, right? We needed 16,000, or we needed 75,000, or Jimmy Gore said we need 30,000, and we kind of hung on to that number for a while. And I said the first thing we need to do is know exactly what is our number. So we did that research and came up with 58,000, that we're 38,000 behind, and that we'll need about 20,000 more by 2030. Now, there are some folks, and I just want to address this kind of right away, who push back on that number and say, but our population hasn't grown all that much. How could we need so many, how many more units? And I'll say, in brief, it is because, A, we've got people here who are living in too close of quarters. They are underhoused. That B, we still have a whole lot of folks who are living without roofs. That 3, we've got a lot of people working here who have to live somewhere else in order to work here and spend a whole lot of time on the road contributing to our greenhouse gas emissions, contributing to our traffic, and taking away from the quality of their life, and also probably the quality of their work when they're working here in town. And then the other thing is that we are having sort of a delayed, what we call household formation. And actually there's a word that I just learned from one of our staffies that I didn't know. I think it's actually called what is it? Head starting, or what is it? Headship rate, the headship rate. I'm always learning the new things. And that is that people are delaying starting households. They're in roommate situations longer. They're longer with their parents. In California, it's 5 years later than other places. So we've just got folks who are kind of hunkered down until maybe they leave. But right now, we are just too far behind in housing, and then our vacancy rate is low. You know, basic kind of Econ 101, housing prices go up, and we've also just sort of got, because of that lack of stock, kind of a stagnation in the market. So people don't have a way to progress through our housing stock. There's not a whole lot of starter homes, and then once you're in a home, it's hard to leave. Like, we've got lots of seniors who are overhoused, who say, this is a way bigger house than I need right now, a way bigger house than I can manage right now, but where am I gonna move? There's not many places to go. So we do have a really big housing need, and I get pushback on this number all the time, not just it's too big, and sometimes we usually convince them, listen, here are the scientific methods we use to figure this out, but also, like, you just shouldn't say it because it's too scary and too daunting. And I think that that's a mistake. Like, I think we've got to, like, really confront our problems head on, and that we need to be making decisions on evidence-based. And I also like to remind people, that this really isn't possible. It is not impossible. If we sort of break it down year by year, what's the production that we need to get there? And then look at our history and say, oh, in the 80s and 90s, we built housing like this. It is not impossible. And there are lots of places in the country who built housing at this rate. So it's not impossible. So there's some good news for you. It is not impossible. We've done it before, and we can do it again. Here's some other good news. The other good news, and if you look at this chart, which I think is a real pretty chart, and it shows lots of production on the left side in the 80s and the 90s, and then a big slowdown during and after the Great Recession. And then, look, we see a spike after that, where we are building more housing. It's still mostly single-family housing, that's the dark blue, but there's some multifamily housing, that's the Tiffany blue, my favorite color. And so that's progress. Right? We are actually doing more. That is some good news. I want to drill down a little bit more deeply into City of Santa Rosa, our county seat, our biggest city, and the place where really probably we need to be doing the most development if we're focusing on infill, if we're focusing on our urban cores. And look here, and you can see that, yes, indeed, this follows the same pattern. We developed a lot in the 80s and 90s. We stopped for a long time during the recession, really stopped, and that's where we built up this deficit. Although in the beginning of the recession, we already had somewhat of a deficit. That's, I think, important to know. And now we have picked up. More good news. Fantastic. Now some bad news. If you look at this chart, prepared by our own Callum Weeks here, policy director, you see how some further explanation on that. And the red line shows fire rebuilds. So if you take away fire rebuilds from this graph, what you actually see is even though we've created a lot of streamlining policy, even though we've got a whole lot of one-time money, that a whole lot of that went to fire rebuilds, which is great, right? We are all grateful for the response that we had to support people who lost their homes in the fires. That is fantastic. But it's also really important to know that when we see these numbers of our increased production, that a whole lot of it is just replacing what we lost on a week in October. That's the bad news. That said, we are seeing more units. If you drive around, who's seeing more multifamily units going up, right? That's exciting. And we need it. Because while we've stopped production, we keep adding jobs, and we especially keep adding low-wage jobs, right? So right now, we have far more low-wage jobs than we have affordable housing units. And in some of our communities, it's even more. So that means we're not housing them, or they're underhoused, or they're overcrowded, or they're driving, which is not what we want, right? That's the exact opposite of what we want. When I talk about affordable housing, and there's there are different kinds of affordable housing, right? There's like capital A, affordable housing by definition, 80% AMI and below, deed-restricted affordable housing that's subsidized, that ensures that you're not going to pay more than 30% of your income on housing so that you can meet all your other basic needs. That's one kind of affordable housing. There's also housing that is affordable for whoever needs that housing, that meets their needs at that level, and that might be our 80 to 120 to 140 workforce housing, right? Housing that is affordable. And then there is now a term called affordable by design, which basically means small. And I think that's okay, right? If you drive around Santa Rosa and see a lot of the old, or any town actually, but in Santa Rosa, you see a lot of the older housing that was built in the first part of the last century, and those were starter homes. And they're 900 square feet, and they served a lot of families. Those were great starter homes. That is affordable by design. So that's not new. But sometimes we also need affordable by design in apartments, the kind of apartments that we all lived in when we first moved out of the house or went to college, and those don't exist very often. Affordable by design for people who are in the workforce, but don't make less than 80% AMI. So we need all of this kind of housing that is affordable for people so that they can meet their basic needs, so that they can save for retirement, so that they might be able to move on in the housing world in some way, so they can support their kids, so they can lead healthy lives. And if you want to know what the impact of not having enough money to pay your rent and meet all your basic needs, I would love for you to go online and check out our Making the Rent report, which puts a really fine point on that, on what the actual human impact of paying too much for housing is. Okay, so when we talk about affordable and workforce housing, something below, say, 120 AMI, I think it's really important that we talk about who those folks are. Because sometimes people have some wrong ideas about who those folks are. They think they're people coming out of homelessness, or they think that they're unemployed or underemployed. And maybe they think that they are lowest wage earners, and that sometimes there's a negative connotation with that. But I want to talk about who these folks are, and even our lowest wage earners. And what you're going to see in this slideshow here, which I'll let run a couple times, is that these are the people that we rely on every day personally. And these are the people that we rely on to help run our county and to run our businesses. These are regular, hardworking folks, and they need some kind of affordable, whether it's a capital A or lowercase a, affordable housing so that they can live healthy lives and so that they can contribute to our healthy economy and healthy and sustainable economy. So these are the folks that need the housing. And they are folks that, I mean, raise your hand if you in some way think that you or we as a county rely on these folks every day. And keep those hands up if you think that we cannot, because I know your mission, if you think that we cannot have a healthy economy unless we are supporting these folks having healthy individual lives. Okay. Now, the problem is we don't really have the housing that these folks need. Our median rents are upwards of, they're a little higher than the state of California, median rents now. On average, they're over $2,000 a month. You can't get a studio for under $1,000 a month. A studio, you know, not even a bedroom, but just like a big room. And that's what folks need. And I just want to give you kind of an idea, and this is targeting the whole 30%, you know, don't pay more than 30% of your income on housing, so that's the statistic we know means that you can meet all your other basic needs and have a healthy life. So here's just some example occupations, people working in the law, probably your legal secretary and your paralegal, but not necessarily a lawyer, unless you're a first-year lawyer, which you might make about this amount of money. You need rent of about $2,000. You might find that. It's going to be a short supply, but you might actually find that. After that, these folks that we rely on all the time, people who work in education, people who work in healthcare support, in our food and hospitality industry, they need rents that simply do not exist. And because they don't exist, and I'll let you, this is a real pretty chart, but it's a little bit hard to read, so I'll get it if you have your computer, you can see that. But basically what this is showing is that this is causing a declining population in our age groups that constitute the major part of our workforce. We've got lots of seniors staying here, we've got little kids being born here, and then in between, people are going elsewhere. Whether they're going to the Central Valley or whether they're going to Texas, they're going elsewhere. And if they haven't gone, they are considering leaving. And this table shows this is the likelihood to move out of Sonoma County in the next 5 years. And you will see that that is high in our younger age range, and that is low in our older age range. So our county is getting older, and nothing wrong with old people. I count myself as one of them now. But it's not, doesn't speak, it doesn't speak well for our future and for our future economy, right? We need folks to be here, to work here, and we need to have vibrant communities. And who sees fewer and fewer families biking around their neighborhood? Who's excited when they see someone pregnant? Because they're like, yay, we're gonna have a baby around. Fantastic. We just don't see very many babies around, right? So we've got to tackle this. We've got to tackle this. And I'll give you actually 3 recent examples that have come up just kind of anecdotally, but this is the kind of stuff we hear all the time. Is we had our annual celebrations party at Mitote a couple weeks ago, and afterwards we were speaking to a couple of the servers there, and they said, our friends and family are moving to Texas, and we don't want to. But the pull is pretty great, because we can get twice the house there for half the money. And more of our family and friends are moving there. But they said, we love it here, we want to stay, but I don't know if we can. That's the first thing. The second thing is I had a little fender bender and had to get a rental car at Enterprise. And they have the great young professionals training program there. And I spoke to a young guy who's a recent college grad, and he grew up here, and he said as soon as he's living at home, and as soon as he started this training program, he is moving. So he's a bright guy who is trained. I see Kathy Goodacre shaking her head. She knows that she works with these young people all the time, that they are smart, they are educated, they are skilled, and they are leaving. That is a problem. And then the third thing, and this is just like is this really what it's come to kind of experience, is I got an email from my veterinarian that said, we need to hire a vet tech, and we found a perfect person, but we cannot find anywhere for her to live. So this is what it's come to find people housing, to make sure that our workforce needs are met, is sending emails to your clients saying, do you have an ADU or a room to rent? This does not bode well for the future. This does not indicate a healthy housing system. Okay, all kinds of bad news. So sorry about that. Sorry about that bummer of bad news. But I'm going to go to some good news and say there are lots of things out of our control that are actually making this worse now. Interest rates through the roof, right? Materials costs 10% higher in the last couple of years. Labor's still high, land's still high, all of those things still expensive. So it's actually, I'm sorry, I had a little bit more bad news before the game. That it's actually making this harder. So you all are doers and you're problem solvers, and I know that, and you claimed that. And so when things get harder, we usually just have to work harder, right? We have to do more. And luckily, there are tons of things within our control locally. And it doesn't mean they're all super easy, but they're doable and they're possible. So if this is a priority, I think we have to look at that. And one more thing, and I'm going to back up. Oh gosh, Ty, I hope I can do this. I got to back up. We're going to go to this one here. And say, while things are harder right now, while interest rates are skyrocketing, materials costs are high, and everything is expensive, we could just say, I guess we're going to have to put the brakes on housing for a couple years. We could say that. That could be a response. But I want to make clear that that is not a couple-year response, because there will be a lag to restart. So it doesn't mean, we're not just saying, our housing system is just going to suck for another few years. No. Doing nothing means things will get worse, and that it will take longer than the delay. And this chart is a perfect demonstration of that. So the Great Recession officially was 2 years long. It took 2 more years for housing prices to recover to 2012, another year for the Dow to recover, that's 2013, and another year, 2014, for jobs to recover, that's 2014. But housing construction was stalled for another 4 years. And here in Sonoma County, it might not have restarted in the way it had, but for the fires and the reaction to the fires, actually. Because you don't just restart an industry on a dime. That doesn't happen. That cannot happen. So we cannot accept a delay right now. We cannot just accept that interest rates have made it harder, and so we're just going to wait, and things will sit in the pipeline until they get better. That is not an acceptable response. All right. I swear I've got good news. I just have to find it. All right. So we can build the housing that we need, but it's going to have to start with one thing, with one word, and that word is yes. Okay? The answer to how we're going to get this done has to start with yes. Yes, we can do this. Yes, we're going to do this. Yes, we are committed to do this. Yes, we're committed to do things differently. Yes, we're committed to doing things that might be hard. Yes, we're committed to working together. Yes, we're committed to maybe being first at something, right? We have to start with some yes things. And we have a policy package. It's just 5 action steps that we are calling North Bay Next. I like to say with that emphasis, North Bay Next. And it is These are 5 things that are doable by our local elected officials. They are doable, and they are doable right now. So we are asking our jurisdictions to attack this problem in 5 ways by 5 doable things. So we'll go, man, I think I'm going too fast here. The first one is we've got to do something about zoning. Deciding where houses can go and what kind of housing can go there. We need to zone for people, and we need to zone for the future. So we need to finally and forever for always end exclusionary zoning. We are asking for some really easy, doable, and kind of gentle changes to that zoning. We're not saying build a high-rise anywhere on any corner. We're saying allow a 4-plex in single-family home zones, allow 6s within a mile of transit, and then let's double the area that we have right now zoned for small plexes, meaning a 3 to a 19, little small apartments. And one thing that I would challenge you to see is when you drive around the county is to look in some of our older neighborhoods, some of our really fine older neighborhoods. The McDonald neighborhood, where on the outskirts of which I own a home, and you will find lots of 4s and lots of 8s and little apartment buildings that are adorable and part of the community. And the reason you'll find them is because they were built before 1940. We did this before too, and it hasn't hurt or changed, the fabric of the neighborhood. In fact, it just made sure that there's more kids driving around those neighborhoods, more babies. So it also is something like, let's respect homeowners and what they want to do with their property. If you've got a 7,500 square foot lot, I think you should have the right to build a 4-plex. It's not a big change to the neighborhood. It's only creating opportunities to have people have starter homes, or for people to move, or to people to live multi-generationally. This should not be a big deal, and it's something that could happen immediately, and has been successful in other areas. It is a huge opportunity, right? So right now, if you look at our jurisdictions in Sonoma County, you will see that most of our land is reserved exclusively for the single-family home model. And this going back to the why is our housing need so great? Part of it too is that we forced folks out of here because we didn't have enough housing options, and that's where that's what has been part of the problem, is that we've committed to one kind of housing primarily. But this chart shows what kind of opportunity we have. There's a whole lot of land that we can kind of sprinkle little small, slightly bigger or slightly more dense housing into to help chip away at our problem. The other thing, and getting back to demographics, and that is that our single-family home-only areas are, by and large, a whole lot older. So if we want to have vibrant neighborhoods that have a future, if we want to have people where places where young families can live, where young families can stay here, then we need to create more options in that neighborhood. All right, the second thing is let's make this faster and a little more fair. Let's streamline housing development by integrating design review boards into planning commissions. We can accelerate the housing entitlement permitting process, still with public input, still with looking at the standards of viewing, but we're going to do it without imposing an additional step that can take months and months and sometimes upwards of a year. Cotati, Healdsburg, Petaluma have done this. Lots of places and other places do this. This is not a hard thing to do, and we could do it right now and probably save those jurisdictions money who would get rid of those, because I'm sure it costs some money and some time to manage those boards. Let's incentivize affordability. And when I say affordability, I mean all the affordability we talked about, right? All affordable housing that are deed restricted, that serve our lowest wage earners, and the kind of affordability that really focuses on that 80 to 140 workforce housing, making sure that our teachers can live here, making sure that our firefighters don't have to drive for 2 hours to get to work, making sure that our healthcare institutions can hire the people they need so it doesn't take us 3 weeks to get a doctor's appointment. All of those things, we need workforce housing. And we are asking for a couple things. Number one, during this unprecedented high interest rate situation combined with combined with high materials costs, that we waive fees for all affordable housing projects and for multifamily affordable by design, that workforce housing, that workforce type housing, for just 3 years. And this is a budgetary decision, and I'm going to say that that's how you walk the talk of your priorities. If you are naming your priorities as a policymaker, as an elected official, you walk that talk through your budgetary decisions. Impact fees are somewhere between 2 and 3% of everybody's budget. And if housing and homelessness is your #1 priority, then I'm going to say you can make a 2% budget adjustment. And if you can't, I'm going to question, what does a priority mean to you? And not to be simplistic or reductionist about it, but if one of your kids or grandkids came to you and said, like, my #1 priority is, but I've got to change my budget by 2%. I think you'd give them some pretty straight and stern and tough love advice at that moment. Is it really your #1 priority if you cannot make a 2% budget adjustment? And I'm not saying it's easy. It is hard to prioritize. I've been in a situation where I've had to cut budgets. I know that that's hard. And if this is our #1 priority, and if it's attached to everything, if it's attached to climate, if it's attached to business, if it's attached to health and education, then we've got to look at this. This is a 3% fee waiver, and we're asking for this. And the second part of that is adopting fees based on square footage. Right now, except for in certain in certain specific stationary zones, you pay the same fees for a studio or an affordable 1-bedroom as you do for a 3-bedroom market rate. That makes absolutely no sense, except for the County of Sonoma, which has a very progressive fee structure. None of them, however, even comply with the new state law AB 602, which say that your fees have to be proportional to the size of the dwelling that you're building. And at some point, all of our jurisdictions are going to have to do this, but of course, state laws, sometimes they give you a whole lot of wiggle room in how long it takes to implement those. And so we're just saying, do it now. Do it now so that we can not have this delay. All right, incentivize affordability. Let's prioritize people and also the planet and the future over parking and eliminate parking minimums. This does not mean eliminate parking. This means let's not mandate what kind of parking developers have to build, which takes up a lot of space, costs a lot of money, and may or may not be necessary. Let's let developers who do this professionally say, this is the kind of parking that this is going to need for this project based on where it is and the kind of people it's going to serve. And also, let's look to the future. We can't keep talking about climate action and building for today. We have to start building for tomorrow, and that means we have to do our part to try to break the kind of one-to-one relationship we have with cars. So let's let developers decide. They got to lease it up. They got to get people to live in there. They are not going to build a place where nobody's going to live. So let's end that parking mandate that just costs a whole lot of money and takes a whole lot of time. The very last thing is, and I know this crowd loves some taxes. That was the joke. I thought I would get a better one. Is that we have got to help pay for this somehow. Some housing pays for itself. Some needs some subsidies. Some needs actually lots of projects need, and I think there's a lot of developers in here will need like 10 or 11 sources of funding. It's hard to get things done. But we need some more money to invest. We need more money to invest in infrastructure that supports housing. And luckily, we have the opportunity to pass a regional bond serving all 9 Bay Area counties that will bring a whole lot of money to support housing development. And it will support housing development up to 120 AMI. So capital A affordable and that workforce housing. In Sonoma County, it would bring $403 million for housing development, and that's not just $403 million actually, because we often can pull down other state and federal funds by offering local matches. And so there's lots of money that sits on the table because we don't have local money to match it with. So this $403 million can be actually leveraged for more money, and that is so this is a regional bond measure that's going to go on the 2024 ballot. It is brought, and this is confusing, by the BAFA regional financing district, BAHFA, but the regional bond measure is called BAHA, Bay Area Housing for All. And that's $10 billion at least regionally. They're still working out whether it will be between 10 and 20, but at $10 billion, it's $403 million to Sonoma County. And we've got to support this. This is game-changing money, and we really probably cannot move our housing goals forward without this money. What does that mean to you as a homeowner? Because I get the property tax bill, and I got a lot of bonds on there. A lot of school bonds, lots of things on there, and it's a lot. It means $100 a year if you have $1 million home. If you've got a $2 billion home, fantastic, first of all. And second of all, that's $200. So that's less than you're going to pay for a nice meal at Stark's. And if it's, raise your hand, one of your number one priorities, I'm going to say $100 a year squares with that pretty easily, or certainly should. Because again, we walk our priorities, we walk the talk of our priorities with our budgets. So we need to do our part as one of the 9 Bay Area counties to make sure that this passes. And part of that is getting early support and momentum from our policymakers, from our elected leaders to say, yes, we support this going on the ballot, and we are going to be here to support it. Even if it's a fight, even if it's a negotiation with different interest groups, that we need this money, this is game-changing money, and we cannot leave it on the table. So, I said I was going to end with an opportunity. And going back to public will building, and how some of it is changing people's minds, but most of it is just getting like-minded people to actually say their like minds out loud, and to say, we support this, and we are giving political cover, and sometimes a little political nudge, but political cover to our elected leaders to say, we want you to take action. That we support you taking action. So, we have a petition to say we support y'all taking these 5 steps. And I would love it if you picked out your phone and pointed it at the screen and added your name to the petition. It's that easy. And I'm going to just give you a second for that. And this is how our elected leaders know that their constituents are supporting them making the hard decisions. It's easy to do nothing, and it is easy to say no. It is sometimes harder to say yes. So let's help them say yes by you saying yes. So you can also, I think, probably do that if you have the QR to your presentation there. You can also go to our website, generationhousing.org, or wearegenh.org, and find out more information and add your name later. But I'd love it if you added it now. I'd love it if I could come back and say we got the biggest response from the doers of the Sonoma County Alliance. Okay, so opportunity, support these 5 steps. The next one is very specifically to the regional bond measure. For that $100 a year, is to add your name to the list of endorsers to the Baja Regional Bond Measure. And it's a QR code that will take you right there. It takes exactly 15 seconds. I've actually timed it to add your name as an endorser to this regional bond measure. These are things, your voice, and actually this group knows that, because this group has done a lot through their voice, right, and continues to. But your voice really, really, really matters in this. And there's some of you who are builders, and there's some of you who are developers or involved in housing in other ways, and y'all know that we can't move a lot of this forward without some of these steps, or it's going to be a really long time, or it's going to be a really slow go, or it's going to be really, really expensive. But the rest of you, you need to know that they need your support, and we need your support to add your voice to this. So that is your opportunity. That's my gift to you today, because you are doers and you love opportunities to do things and to be solution-minded. You are welcome. I think I have a few minutes for questions.
Yeah, we've got time.
Brian Ling, I saw that hand go up very enthusiastically quickly. I don't know if that's my job type.
You're doing great.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for coming today and all you presented. I do have one thought on everything. We're going to compete with Austin and Boise and Reno and you name it all the time. And building materials and interest rates in Austin and Reno and Santa Rosa are all the same. And they will be now, and 5 years and 10 years and 100 years from now, they'll all be the same. So I think we need to talk less about that and talk everything, what you're doing. We need your help. We've been doing this for 40 years. Everything that goes into build a house before that first shovel hits the ground.
Yep.
And that is where we are non-competitive with Reno and Boise and Austin, because we have so much problem getting that first shovel in.
That's great. That is absolutely right, and that is where that is absolutely right, and that is sometimes because of NIMBYism and where we need people to raise their voices, and that's sometimes because of bureaucratic stuff like the design review board and the amount of time that we allow that process to take. That is because of fees. Right now, in Sonoma County, about 11% of your housing development is going to go to fees. In Arizona, it's 2%. That's a big difference. You are absolutely right. Michelle Whitman.
Oh.
Sorry. Gary
my
Lentz, you got
Great presentation, loved it, Jen. I would argue, you mentioned climate change and our goals there. I would argue that that is a higher priority in this community than housing, I think, among our electeds and whatnot. Maybe I'm wrong, but I was watching all these mandates pass over the last 20 years or so and saying, this is making it more expensive here, this is making it more expensive here. Have you given any consideration to getting us to suspend things that we're doing locally that are not required at the state? I feel like that's a signal to developers. Don't come here. You're going to build things that are unaffordable that people can't afford. So I'm just curious if that has ever come up.
That's exactly what these things are, Gary. That's exactly what these things are, is being a little more aggressive, but in a surgical way, than what is required by the state. That's exactly right. And I also want to say, in terms of like stated priorities of their jurisdiction, they do overall rank housing homelessness #1, or higher than climate, but climate's right there. But those two things go together. And one of the very cool things that's happening right now is that enviros used to be barriers to housing. And there's a new environmental leadership that is focused on climate action that are now housing supporters, because they understand that affordable housing and that infill development and multifamily housing and getting people to get to live where they work is a critical part of our climate action plan. It is almost always in the top 5 steps of any climate action plan by enviros, not by housers, but by environmental groups.
Jen, thank you so much. Aaron Smith. Your question about the incentivizing the fees and all, has anyone done any research or presented to the politicians, the elected officials, what the economy will do by keeping those people here? So even those people that are driving from out of town, their money ends up back in other places. So has that dynamic been presented so that they can see we're reducing fees here, but we're getting in other places to even this out?
Thank you for that question, because #1, it reminds me that I forgot to say that we did already release one FAQ, but we are basically every 2 weeks going to be releasing sort of white paper FAQs on each one of these policies that drills pretty deeply into these. And the last one of those will be fees. It's sort of the most complicated, and we want to make it the most robust, although we've already provided some of that information. Yes, I mean, there is research on that. There's general research, like McKinsey says, you invest $1 into housing and you're going to get a local economic return of $2.15. Also job growth. There's been research done and presented, I know, to the city of Santa Rosa about the exponential value property tax revenue that is created by multifamily housing as opposed to single family homes, and it is way greater. Like, you are per acre, you're creating about 12 times more value with an 8-plex in downtown Santa Rosa than the entire mall, and that's a whole lot bigger. So there has been that information presented, and we are going to continue to present more information. But I'm glad you asked that, particularly about the fees, because I do think it's important that we actually characterize this much more as an investment in our financial future than in a sacrifice. It is a temporary sacrifice that is an investment.
Hey Jen, excellent presentation.
You gotta get the mic,
She gave me the
Michelle.
mic. But I just want to make a comment in support, and when I was Director of Housing, Affordable Housing for Sonoma County, where Michelle is now, I did a study on the County Fund for Housing, which is county money that was put into affordable housing deals for the life of that fund that I could go back 10 years, the leveraging rate to bring in state and federal and other types of money was 13-1 on average. And the lowest I saw was 7-1. So your number of 400 million coming to Sonoma County could be leveraged between 7 and 13-1, which turns it more into something like $4 billion. And that's real data that we saw. So local money going into affordable housing unlocks huge amounts of money coming from federal and state sources. That's the only way to really approach the problem. So that's a really important add-on to the slide that shows how much the Baja bond measure would produce for Sonoma County.
Thanks, Ben. Michelle Whitman, because now she's the new CDC director in Sonoma County, I feel like we should prioritize her. She's been raising her hand.
I was headed that way.
All right. Thanks, Jen.
Lead the room.
Thanks, Jen. What I love about Generation Housing and your whole team is that you're really helping build a housing ethic here in Sonoma County. We have an incredible environmental ethic and a weak housing ethic, but I really see it building, and I appreciate that. One thing I want to say about the estimate, I too look at my property tax bill, and it's got a long list of add-ons, but the number, the $100 per $1 million of assessed value, I know quite a few people in this room, and they've lived in their houses a long time, and they live in $1 million houses or $2 million houses, but they're assessed at way less than that. So the ding that you're going to experience is probably, if you've lived in your house a long time, lower than those estimates, and such a bargain. And I will happily vote for Baja and happily pay that extra tax.
All right, we've got a lot of questions. I'm going to just do a little circle here.
Jen, thank you. I'm not big on taxes, but I signed your petition.
Thanks, Ben. That's a real confession there.
There you go. No, I did. I signed it. So, I want to give you an obstacle and help us understand how you're going to overcome this obstacle. And the obstacle is that currently all the cities are spending millions and millions of dollars towards homelessness. Santa Rosa, for instance, 8.5, almost $10 million. 2% is almost 11 million. 2% of their budget. So you're at $20 million. Share with us a conversation that you're going to have with Mayor Keisha.
Well, I've had a conversation with Mayor Keisha, and Mark wants to know this answer too, right, Mark? Well, first of all, I appreciate the question, and I'm gonna in some ways sort of duck the question a little bit and say, it's the job of every jurisdiction, that's the job of the electeds to figure out how are they going to make those changes. And I am not going to, we as an organization are not gonna say, cut this, cut this, cut this. First of all, it's different for every jurisdiction. It's super complicated. It doesn't have to be simple. It can be from a little bit here and there and here and there. However, here's what I do know. That amount that you talked about paying, in terms of homelessness services, and I wish Jenny Lynn was here. She will tell you, Jenny Lynn Holmes, Catholic Charities, who provides more, homelessness services than anywhere else anyone else in the county, will tell you unequivocally that the solution to homelessness, so that we don't have to pay all that money, is more housing. That we can keep putting a whole lot of money into managing and mitigating, and we don't have much of a choice, right? But until we solve it, that is going to be a big and increasing line item. So there's got to be some kind of temporary shifting or tightening of the belt, and where Mark chooses to do that, I'm not sure. That's going to be the hard work of being council member staff, but it's not impossible. And we know it's not impossible because every so-and-so years, every jurisdiction or school district has to, not by their own choice, all of a sudden make 8 to 10% cuts. And it's terrible, and everybody's mad, and it happens because it's possible. So I think the answer is that's going to have to be their job. And it's going to be different from everywhere, but we have got to shift our investments from managing and mitigating to solving. Mick, you dropped the mic. I'm sure that's not the first time.
I was just hoping that you could just make a few comments around HUD's green, resilient, and retrofit program, and just to let the group know that as developers, we no longer have to make the choice between housing and environmental. With this new program, which is $800 million, we are able to bring projects up from a grant that is non-repayable to the federal government. So I just want to, if you could just spend a few minutes talking about that, just so the group knows we don't have to it's not an either or, we can now bring the two together.
What I'll say is, I wish I could spend a few minutes talking about that, but I know about what you just said and no more depth. So if you have more information about that, then I'd invite you to take this moment to share that.
I would just say, look the program up, and developers, we're not in the, we can bring the two into alignment now with this new program. So we can have also smart environmental choices being made in our housing, affordable housing projects. So it's not an either or choice anymore, which is a really exciting program.
What's the name of the program?
It's HUD's Green, Resilient, and Retrofit, GSSR.
Thank you. I see you, Vic McKnight.
All right, we'll do 2 more quick questions. Start with Mike and go to, we'll go right to you.
Can you speak to SB 9 and what opportunities that provides? Oh, I apologize. I thought you were pointing at me.
I was setting rules.
I don't know that anybody's ever stood down after they saw that I got the microphone, so I'm a little bit nervous here. I want to do a little bit of math. So you said it's $100 per $1 million.
Assessed value.
Assessed, so that's 0.01% of your assessed value. This is a bond. How long does the bond go for, and how much is going to get used up in interest payments? How's that all going to work out?
I'm going to have to get back to you on the interest payments, and it is, right now, I think it is slated to go for 10 to 20 years, but and this is the hard part, and I want to be real frank about this, is that the final language of this bill has not been written. And so you are, when I ask you to sign a petition or an endorsement, you are endorsing a concept that is not, you can always take your name back, I'm sure, that is not totally final. So.
Okay, and also just a comment while I walk the microphone back here. I always promised I would never sound like my father, and my next comment is going to sound like my father because I'm now characterized as old. You talk about unprecedented interest rates of today. When I started a company in 1982, the interest rates was 18%.
I guess it's unprecedented since I graduated from high school. I think so. You set yourself up. I'm sorry. Or junior. Oh, recent decades in the millennium. We're going to say something.
How do you follow that?
I don't know. Sorry.
Can you speak to SB 9 and what the opportunity that provides homeowners or landowners and also developers?
Yeah, SB 9, which is, I think, legislation coming out 2 years ago of the state, does theoretically end most exclusionary zoning in that it provides rights to owners of single-family home parcels to either to split their lot if it complies with other local restrictions and to build duplexes on their land. And that was, I applaud the effort. And it has not been particularly successful because there are so many requirements attached to that and so many expenses, and there's actually a cleanup bill that Cal knows much more about than I do right now to try to help increase the impact of that, but so far it has been close to zero impactful. Because it's not easing the burden, and it really is putting the onus on homeowners to become developers, but without making that easier. And there's not a whole lot of big bang for your buck because the expense is so great. So SB 9 does provide you legally with some rights. Practically, it has not been particularly successful.
So I was given last question. I appreciate the time, and I'll make it kind of quick. I know that for me, parking is a big issue. So when I heard you talk about removing parking requirements, I thought to myself, What is that going to do to our local neighborhoods where we are building duplexes or fourplexes? What's that going to do to our affordable housing areas and industrial parks and things in those areas that are zoned appropriately, where there's not enough parking and they're spilling out? What's going to happen to downtown if we build up, but we don't have enough parking? How do you mitigate those problems?
Well, I think if you look across the country, you're going to find out that it actually is going to revitalize downtowns and urban cores because it creates a living and walking force there, that people go to businesses and that they want to go to, even if there's not easy parking, and almost every urban environment is proof of that. That folks are going to hopefully use, these things are going to have to happen together. There's going to have to be an increased demand for transit so that there's a response by transit. We are going to have to do this all together. We're going to have to pull that lever and come up with the solutions to match them. But there also is lots of data that says that the strain on our parking system is not as great as you think. And there is a whole lot of our parking that it goes unused lots of times, and there are some creative solutions to that, whether it's parking share arrangements, obviously kind of trying to shift to more opportunities for other forms of transportation or for shared forms of transportation. It is a multifaceted solution, but it's one that we're going to need to undertake because we can't be slaves to our parking lots. We are prioritizing them over housing.
Thank you, Jen. And now we're running a little bit over, but if you'd bear with me because I'd like to acknowledge our elected officials. Carla Rodriguez, our district attorney. Michelle Whitman, the executive director of the Sonoma County Community Development Commission. Ron Edwards, Healdsburg City Council. Diva Marie Proto, County Clerk, Recorder, and Assessor's Office. Jeff Woods and Sergeant Matt North from the Santa Rosa Police Association. Mark Stapp, Santa Rosa City Council, and Eric Konishofer, Planning Commission, District 5. And then I want to remind you and invite you for next month's meeting on November 1st, where we will have top law enforcement from the county talk about community safety, a year in review, and what we can do. Thank you all for coming. If you are a guest, I encourage you to join the Sonoma County Alliance. Sonoma County Alliance is a business advocacy organization. Our strength is our voice, and our voice is our membership. Please join Sonoma County Alliance and contribute your voice. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.